really do the research, you start compiling all this information, all this evidence, it's unavoidable, all right, that the oldest civilization was in the Yucatan in Central America. Future discoveries may change this conclusion. It seems that Egypt was first peopled by immigrants from the Yucatan. Say what? It seems that Egypt was first peopled by the immigrants from Yucatan. We're in this book. A lot of you know this book or heard about it before. You know, got Contract and a lot of other, master teachers out here, reading from it in past videos and all that. I'm grateful to them for bringing this, books across, to our awareness. All right, so this is called Mysteries of the Mexican Pyramids by Peter Tompkins, author of Secret of the Great Pyramid. Correlation in this video. Alright, it says a later comparison between Mayan and Egyptian alphabets. Just want to read about this part of the book. First, they're going to be mentioning this archaeologist. It says in the College of San Gregorio, Mexico City, Brazil, discovered a manuscript in Nahuatl to which he gave the name of Chimalpopoca Codis in honor of his teacher of Nahuatl, Faustino C. Galicia, who was a descendant of Montezuma's third son. Alright, so this Brasseur is a French guy. He actually translated Popol Vuh also in French. It's very popular. So it was a Spanish translation that was before in my last Hebrew video. Alright, and we mentioned Brasseur as well. So I just want to read here what Brasseur says. It says Brasseur also traced the myth of Quetzalcoatl back to Plato's Atlantis. Quetzalcoatl is from Atlantis. And concluded that the Toltecs could have been descendants of survivors of that catastrophe. Gradually, Brasseur ascribed an increase in antiquity to the native cultures of Mesoamerica and came to believe that many of the truths of modern science had already been anticipated by the inhabitants of Mesoamerica many centuries previously. He's saying that he had to increase how old they were, antiquity, the Mayans, or the natives of Mesoamerica, or the cultures, right, the aboriginal cultures of Mesoamerica, and that many of the truths that we know today as modern science, as fact, right? This was already anticipated by our ancestors back in the day in Mesoamerica, many centuries previously, right? Science, high advanced, math, science, architecture was all here. As he grew older, not just a myth. And he's saying the other historians couldn't handle that. They weren't ready for that. As one historian summed up the situation, unfortunately, as book after book appeared, his ideas grew more strange and his explanations more attenuated, so that serious leaders who had respected him increasingly lost confidence in his utterances. So his books and a lot of his works weren't mentioned. A lot of them, they're not really mentioned in a lot of textbooks. They do this on purpose. Brasseur complained that no serious archaeological work was being done in the Americas, that it was foolish to try to write world history, leaving out one half the world. All right, how could they try to write world history when they only write on about the other side of the world, when we got all these advanced civilizations over here, the other half of the world, right? So it was so foolish to try to write world history, leaving out one half of the world, the Americas. He believed the Carians of Central America to have been the oldest known civilization. The oldest. He's talking about in the world, not just in the Americas. And industrious and commercial people who could handle metal and precious stones. great sailors and astronomers who had traveled the world colonizing Atlantis. They colonized it. This is Atlantis. This is that center. This is the origin. And they also colonized what? The Mediterranean and ancient Egypt. Who civilized who? Whose astronomy, physics, and religious practices were similar, including a strong cult of Sirius, the dog star, and deification of the crocodile, from all which Russell concluded that either Egypt had been a Central American colony or vice versa. And you know the truth is that it was just a colony of Atlantis, so-called Atlantis America or Central American colony. All right? And Maya. Alright, so we're back in the book Atlantis, the Antediluvian World by Ignatius Donnelly, written in 1882. A lot of gems in this book. You know, we're going to keep coming back to it. And always a very scholarly book. If you don't know the story behind this book and the author, you know, the sources he uses, it's very scholarly actually. It's not, you know, even though he's putting in his opinions and his narrative, he's doing a lot of research, or he did a lot of research for this book back in 1882, right? So we're in part 5, the colonies of Atlantis, and we're in chapter 1, the Central American and Mexican colonies. The western shores of Atlantis were not far distant from the West Indian islands, as people possessed of ships could readily pass from island to island until they reached the continent. Columbus found the natives making such voyages in open canoes. If then we will suppose that there was no original connection between the inhabitants of the mainland and of Atlantis, the commercial activity of the Atlanteans would soon reveal to them the shores of the Gulf. Commerce implies a plantation of colonies. The trading post is always the nucleus of a settlement. We have seen this illustrated in modern times in the case of the English East India Company and the Hudson Bay Company. We can therefore readily believe that commercial intercourse between Atlantis and Yucatan, Honduras, and Mexico created colonies along the shores of the Gulf, which gradually spread into the interior and to the high tablelands of Mexico. And accordingly, we find, as I have already shown, that all the traditions of Central America and Mexico point to some country in the east and beyond the seas as the source of their first civilized people. And this region, known among them as Aztlan was Utah, lived in the memory of the people as a beautiful and happy land where their ancestors had dwelt in peace for many generations. If you watch UB News videos about the compass and how, you know, Hebrews really sought, you know, north, east, south, and west, you know, east is really north. So north of Mexico is Utah, Aztlan. Yeah. Continuing the book, it says Dr. Le Plongeon. All right, we already know who that is, right? We got Queen Mu. We've been reading his books. All right, how he's correlating the Mayas with the Nagas and how they colonized the whole world too. It says Dr. Le Plongeon, who spent 4 years exploring the Yucatan, says 1/3 of this tongue, the Maya, is pure Greek. Who brought the dialect of Homer to America? He's asking. Or who took to Greece that of the Mayas? Exactly. But he's saying that 1/3 of this tongue is pure Greek. Well, basically, this is the true old world, and the Mayas are one of the progenitors to language. That's why you're gonna find 1/3 of it resembling to Greek. But his second question is the correct one. Or who took Greece? Who took to Greece that of the Mayas? Greek is the offspring of the Sanskrit. So if Greek is the offspring of the Sanskrit, and 1/3 of the Maya is Greek, then what is it telling you, right? That it's Sanskrit. And we already know the Nagas and the Hindu, everything that started out in India was from Prince Maya. All that, the original inhabitants were the Nagas who were Mayas, right? So it's all making sense, right? Is Maya, or are they Kobil? The Maya is not devoid of words from the Assyrian, all right? It's not. That the population of Central America, and this term, I include Mexico, was at one time very dense and had attained to a high degree of civilization, higher even than that of Europe in the time of Columbus. There can be no question, and it is also probable, as I have shown, that they originally belonged to the white race. Dodge the hijack. They're always going to add their white race into it. How else are they going to feel important? But when they talk about reading about, they're misinterpreting these codices. White also means pure, a pure people.
Oh, pure people.
when you say white race, a pure people, not just a complexion. Because we already know how the Nagas, the original aboriginals, look like. Desiree Charnay, who is now exploring the ruins of Central America, says, North American Review, January 1881, page 48, the Toltecs were fair, robust, and bearded. I have often seen Indians as pure blood with blue eyes. So let's dodge all the hijacks here, right? Quetzalcoatl was represented as large, with a big head and a heavy beard. The same author speaks, page 44, of the ocean of ruins all around, not inferior in size to those of Egypt, not inferior. At Teotihuacan, he measured one building 2,000 feet wide on each side, and 15 pyramids, each nearly as large at the base as Cheops. Alright? The city is indeed of vast extent. The whole ground, over a space of 5 or 6 miles in diameter, is covered with heaps of ruins. Ruins which at first make no impression, so complete is their dilapidation. He asserts the great antiquity of these ruins because he found the very highways of the ancient city to be composed of broken bricks and pottery, the debris left by earlier populations. This continent, he says on page 43, is the land of mysteries. We here enter an infinity whose limits we cannot estimate. They don't know anything about us. I shall soon have to quit work in this place. The long avenue on which it stands is lined with ruins of public buildings and palaces forming continuous lines as in the streets of modern cities. Still, all these edifices and halls were as nothing compared with the vast substructures which strengthened their foundations. We find the strongest resemblances to the works of the ancient European races. The masonry is similar. The cement is the same. The cement here in America is the same. Alright, the sculptures are alike. Both peoples use the arch. In both continents we find bricks, glassware, and even porcelain. North American Review, December 1880, page 524 and 525, says, with blue figures on a white ground, also bronze composed of the same elements of copper and tin in like proportions, coins made of copper, round and T-shaped, and even metallic candlesticks. Desiree Charnay believes that he has found in the ruins of Tula, remember, the bones of swine, sheep, oxen, and horses in fossil state, indicating an immense antiquity. Whoa! Alright, so you guys, if you haven't seen my Ancient American Animals video, go check it out. Alright, we prove it scientifically. We know horses, mammals, and all these animals they just named here are all from the Americas. And this book, Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, by Ignatius Donnelly, he's letting us know, he's reminding us that Desiree Charnay, he found bones in the ruins of Tula of swine, sheep, oxen, and horses in fossil state. They weren't brought by Europeans, the horses. They were already here. Alright, go check out my animals video if you haven't seen it. They were already here when the Europeans got here with their horses. Right? There was of immense antiquity. This is the true old world. This is Eden. The Toltecs possessed a pure and simple religion like that of Atlantis as described by Plato, with the same sacrifices of fruits and flowers. Fruits and flowers, right? I thought they were sacrificing humans. They were farmers. They raised and wove cotton. They cultivated fruits. They used the sign of the cross extensively. The cross. You made the saint a Christian symbol? Future video. They cut and engraved precious stones. Among their carvings have been found representations of the elephant and the lion. Both animals not known in America. But if you saw my Ancient Animals video, you know they were here. We had lions, we had elephants. And they did develop here. Again, carnivores, mammals, all are from America. We had our own type of elephants. Alright? And our own type of lions. The forms of sepulture were the same as among the ancient races of the old world. Same as the ancient races of the old world, because this is the old world. They burned the bodies of their great men and enclosed the dust in funeral urns. Some of their dead were buried in a sitting position, others reclined at full length, and many were embalmed like the Egyptian mummies. Mysteries of the Mexican Pyramids, again by Peter Tompkins. I want to read this real quick too. Alright, this is on page 153. It says the first real digs. Alright, has these smash. See all this. I've shown this actual image before. Alright. I just want to read this side note right here, real quick. I'm zoom in. Alright, something says Charnay was surprised at the variety of human types portrayed on masks, often with considerable artistic skill. There were the features of Caucasian, Greek, Chinese, Japanese, and Negro. Alright, and Negro. This doesn't mean African. Also, Maya type heads with retreating foreheads, such as he had seen in Yucatan. They seem to validate the theories of Violet Leduc about an influx of Europeans and Asiatics, leading Charnay to comment that numerous races must have succeeded each other and amalgamated on the continent, which until lately was supposed to be so new and is in truth so old. This continent, America, is actually in truth so old, the true old world. Yes, this is the true old world. That's why you find all these phenotypes here. I've been trying to explain. We had all kinds of phenotypes. This is the origin. Alright, this is Atlantis. Alright? So it was supposed to be so new and is in truth so old. During 15 years of investigation of thousands of pre-Columbian terracotta pottery heads and figures, art historian Alexander von Butenau found portraits of 5 different racial types: Mongoloid, Chinese, Japanese, Negroid, and all types of white people, especially Semitic. So Semitic is supposed to be white. Dodge the hijack, alright? Types with and without beards. So Shemitic or Shem, with beard and without beards. Alright? Alright, I'm on this part of the book, page 346, says part 24, Origins of the Maya. Just was reading a little bit about their history. Just wanted to read this part right here. It says, so he gave a couple of theories of where they might be from. You know, he said Atlantis, and well, basically he was just saying Atlantis, really. And then he says the best next sources would be, you know, the native sources, right? From the books cognited from memory of the Quiche in the Maya, such as the books of Chilam Balam and the Popol Vuh, rediscovered and publicized by Brasseur. Again, Brasseur de Bourbon. We know Brasseur translated it. And the books of Chilam Balam relate that the first inhabitants of Yucatan were the Chanes, people of the serpent. Talking about the Nagas, snake kings, people of the serpent, said to have come from the east in AD 219 in boats across the water with their leader Sama, also known as Itzama, serpent of the east. So it's Itza, really, a healer who could cure by laying on of hands. So he cured with his hands, and like the therapeutes revived the dead, and he also revived the dead. So Itzama is also related with Quetzalcoatl. All right, some say it's the same. And now we know about Quetzalcoatl. Some of that video, what he resembled, and how Mormons saw him supposedly as Jesus. The Americans thought we know how to dodge the hijack. But this Itzama, again, cures with his hands, and he revives the dead. What does that remind you of? The Shumael book of Chilam Balam is even more specific. It speaks of its first inhabitants of Yucatan, known as Acanule, or people of the serpent, having come across the waters from the east in boats to locate on the island of Consumel, off the coast of Yucatan. As their population grew, these Itza moved to the mainland and built cities altogether, 150, including Chichen Itza, the mouth of the wells of Itza, Izamal, Aki, Uxmal, and Mayapan. Alright, so I just want to continue. This is on page 350 in this book, Mysteries of the Mexican Pyramids. It says right here, let me just real quick, just tap it right here. You see this one right here? It's on the wall somewhere. It says Hugh Fox and his Gods of the Cataclysm says the association with the yogic trance is especially evident in these Monte Album figures, alright? A yogic dance, that's like a Hindu thing, right? But we see that there was actually here with the Maya. In these Monte Album figures, because the design portrayed on the dancers' bodies are chakras, alright? These are chakras. You see the chakras? Alright, we had that knowledge of that here. The mystic centers connected with successful meditation. Alright, I'll just read this part right here. It says, like the Olmecs, the earliest known settlers of Monte Alba had a hieroglyphic system of writing, a calendar, and a mathematical system of computing by bar and dot. These settlers left some extraordinary cyclopean rugs built into buildings which portray life-sized Negroid dancers with flat noses, round faces, and thick lips. Alongside them are Old Testament types. Old Testament types? Alongside them are Old Testament types. Old Testament types. See that? With hooked noses and spatulate beards. All very un-Indian. They're talking about the modern day so-called Native Americans, right? They don't resemble them. Archaeologists date these finds around 500 BC and attribute the ruins to the Olmec, alright? Again, they just named that as a tag. They didn't call themselves Olmec or rubber people. That's what they named them, alright? The startling Semitic figures found throughout Mesoamerica. See this? Alright, so once again, we're back in this book. If you've been surfing the wave, following this series especially, we've read from this book before called Queen Mu and the Egyptian Sphinx. This is written by Augustus Le Plongeon, MD. He did some archaeological work there in the Yucatan, very scholarly actually. He did a lot of research. He has a lot of sources in his book. It says here, author of the Sacred Mysteries among the Mayas and the Quiches. Alright, we actually got 2 or 3 of his books we're going to get into in this series. Alright, we still haven't touched on 2 of them. Don't worry, we are. Again, this was written in 1896. Just want to go ahead and read sign here. We're going to continue in this book. Alright. In the appendix are presented for the first time in modern ages the cosmogonic notions of the ancient Mayas, rediscovered by me. They will be found identical with those of the other civilized nations of antiquity. In them are embodied many of the secret doctrines communicated in their initiations to the adepts in India, Chaldea, Egypt, and Samothracia. The origin of the worship of the cross. Okay, again, future video. I'm going to show you where the cross originated. And he just correlated with it. And I didn't know he was going to correlate with that. But again, the origin of the worship of the cross, or commemorance, or what the cross was, right? Not a worship. Of that of the tree, or the tree of life, and of the serpent, the Khan's plum serpent, introduced in India by the Nagas. Who? The Nagas. This was introduced in India by the Nagas, who raised such a magnificent temple in Cambodia. The Nagas raised a temple in Cambodia. Who are these Nagas? In the city of Angkor Thom, to their god, the 7-headed serpent, the Ak-Shapat of the Mayas. The same god, Mayas, which is called Ak-Shapat. And afterward carried its worship to Akkad and to Babylon. So what? We're talking about the Nagas? Who was these Nagas? They had brought this serpent knowledge from America, right, to Cambodia, from there to Akkad and to Babylon. So we see in a reverse direction. In these cosmogonic notions, we also find the reason why the number 10 was held most sacred by all civilized nations of antiquity, and why the Mayas, who in their scheme of numeration adopted the decimal system, did not reckon by tens, but by 5s and 20s, and why they used the 20 millionth part of half the meridian as standard of lineal measures. In the following pages, I simply offer to my readers the relation of certain facts I have learned from the sculptures, the monumental inscriptions carved on the walls of the ruined palaces of the Mayas, the record of which is likewise contained in such of their books as have reached us. I venture only such explanations as will make clear their identity with the conceptions on the same subjects of the wise men of India, Chaldea, Egypt, and Greece. Alright, I do not ask my readers to accept a priori of my own conclusions, but to follow the sound advice contained in the Indian saying quoted at the beginning of this preface. Alright? verify by experience what you have learned, then only then form your own opinion. All right, so we continue in the book, The Lost Continent of Mu by Colonel James Churchward, 1931. And I'm on page 113, wanted to read this part to you. More correlation where we're learning. It says, now I shall try to fix an appropriate date of the Naga colony in India before it became a colonial empire. All right, so a colony. One prominent figure in the Naga or Maya Empire in India. So this Naga Empire is really the Maya Empire in India. It's a colony of the Maya. So it said that one prominent figure in this Naga or Maya Empire in India was Prince Maya. Yes, Prince Maya. They had a prince.
Maya.
His name was Maya. The time of Prince Maya is doubtful, although I have come across many records about him. Not a single one even estimates the day when he lived. But according to traditions, and these traditions are as plentiful as leaves on a tree, Prince Maya lived 15,000 to 20,000 years ago. In Ramayana, or in the Ramayana, alright, that's a book, an ancient Hindu book of poems or stories or something like that. Alright, we find this reference to him. In olden times, there was a prince of the Nagas whose name was Maya, of the Serpent Kings. Of the Nagas, who's the Serpent Kings again? The Mayas, right? His name was Maya. Prince Maya was the author of the Surya Siddhanta, the hoariest treatise on astronomy in India. Its age has been variously estimated at from 10,000 to 22,000 years. At the time of Prince Maya, the Nagas were an empire. When the handle and shovel of this knife were made, the Nagas were a colony, antedated the empire. That they were only a colony is clearly shown by the suns without rays on the horizon. This proves the extreme antiquity of the handle and machine, right? And this is what they're talking about, this knife and handle, that Naga Hindu knife, they call it. It is not known when the Naga Empire ended, but they're saying that this is very old, before their empire was established, when they were just
Hindu knife, the Hindu knife.
So what is the Ramayana? It says the Ramayana is an ancient Indian epic composed sometime in the 5th century BC about the exile and then return of Rama, prince of Ayodhya. Alright, so we're in ancient history inside the Alright. It was composed in Sanskrit by the sage Valmiki. Alright, so this was written by this guy named Valmiki, who's known as a famous sage. Alright. The Ramayana. Valmiki was a great sage and author of the Ramayana. It says Maharshi Valmiki, the author of the great Indian epic Ramayana, was a Hindu sage who lived around the beginning of the first millennium BC. He is referred to as the Adi Kavi, the original creator of the Hindu sloka, a verse form in which most of the great epics such as the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, Puranas, and other works are composed. Alright? He started this. Alright? So I'm going to read this book over here. We're in the book here. It's called Garden of the Elder Gods by Don Schomburg. Alright, and just read it right here. There's an overview of such regional centers of commands within Asia, where one of the early academies was evidently located in ancient Burma, modern day Myanmar. According to the Indian historian Valmiki, alright, here we go, Valmiki, right? An Indian historian, who's a real sage, a real historian. Burma was the first settlement in Asia. For some records, supposedly dating this culture started around 33,000 BC. Alright, I can go that back. Alright, according to them, right? Records from other diverse cultures state that the extensive instruction was dispensed throughout Burma prior to its dispersal to other lands. Such graduates eventually migrated eastward into China and southeastward into Thailand and Cambodia, as well as westward into an uninhabited part of northwest India. Alright, so they're going to tell us what they're talking about. About these graduates. It says in those areas, human graduates and a few helpers that accompanied them taught human natives they encountered. Those regional teachers became known as the Nagas. Alright, the Nagas. Certain ancient tablets found in Burma have been directly linked with Naga records found within India. Writings by Valmiki expressly stated, now listen to what Valmiki said, the author of the Ramayana. Alright? What he stated. It says the Maya, starting from the land of their birth in the east, right, in America, they went first to Burma and there taught the natives who became known as the people of the Nagas. Alright? See what's going on here? See the correlation? The original indigenous culture of India is thought to be that of the Nagas, who were later called the Nakals, and still later became known as the Maya. Right?
Wow.
They later became known as the Maya.
Wow.
Reportedly imparted that culture. It was the Nagas who started this whole Indian or Hindustan or Hindu mythology, culture, and history. However, colonial church work claimed that the original or earliest people were actually the Maya. Alright? He taught the right thing, which was the Maya. Perhaps a reference to the ancient ones or the pure-blooded, human-like lunar Petries that comprised a group known as the Helpers. Valmiki further claimed that the Naga came to be called the Maya in certain later settlements. So even these Nagas were called Maya in India. Alright, you hear that? Accounting for the overall confusion of the chronological order of introduction between the Naga, the Navas, Nakals, and Maya. They're probably all the same people. Some records resolve this linguistic dispute by referring to the earliest civilizers as the Naga Maya, the Naga Maya. Alright? There are further indications, although inconclusive, that the Naga Maya may have also been associated with the Mayans of Mesoamerica. Alright? They are the Mayans of Mesoamerica. Where else would they get the word from? Ancient records indicate that the original Naga Maya were associated with the serpent people. The what?
Serpent people.
Again, we were reading earlier, right, in the book Mysteries of the Mexican Pyramids, right? Origin of the Maya, what did it tell us? Right, the book of Chilambalam related the first inhabitants of Yucatan were the Chanés, people of the serpent, right? Sama, serpent of the east, right? The Chumal book of Chilambalam is even more specific. It speaks of the first inhabitants of Yucatan known as the Acanile, or people of the serpent, people of the serpent. I will go back to Garden of the Elders Gods. Right, the other book we were reading says again, ancient records indicate that the original Naga Maya were associated with the serpent people, snake kings, the Nagas. What up, my Naga? The esoteric non-human race of wondrous beings.
What up, my Naga? My nigga. What up, my nigga? What up, my nigga? What up, my Naga? What up, my nigga? What up, my
nigga? The serpent
nigga?
symbol was one of the ancient icons, specifically referring to ancient ones. See, that's you they're talking about, the ancient ones. Hence, the Naga emblem became the serpent or cobra symbol of ancient India, one revered as signifying both great wisdom and immense knowledge. You find that in Egypt too, right? Now back to what the Ramajana was telling us and what we were reading in the other book, right? It was saying that about Prince Maya, right? It says one of the prominent Naga Empire leaders was the original Prince Maya, right? This is in their text, Prince Maya.
By the time that next video there. What up, my Naga?
Counterpart also existed during much later times. No way of record established time frame for the original prince, but oral traditions place him as living sometime between 18,000 and 13,000 BC. The Ramayana merely refers to the original Prince Maya as living in the olden times. Original people in the olden times. That original prince is credited as the true source of most of the esoteric knowledge of India. Right? He was a Maya, he was an American, a Naga. Right? He passed the knowledge over to the Hindus over there, or the native people over there. Alright, passed down over the ages, which was later contained in the Surya, Siddhanta, alright, all that he taught in his Maya was printed right there in that book. The question is often asked, of what practical utility can the knowledge that America was possibly the cradle of man's civilization be to mankind? And that's a deep statement right there, right? So they tell us now in 2019, all right, so we're Indians. What now? All right, America's a true world. What now? How does that help us? All right? So this is deep, man. This is just people having personal questions, right? Because, I mean, you shouldn't have to ask that. I mean, just think about it. And lied to is a big, big, big lie. And why are they hiding that? Think about it. So let's go back to what Mr. Augustus Leplejon in the 1800s is asking, or what he's showing that people also did back then. Again, the question is often asked, of what practical utility can the knowledge that America was possibly the cradle of man's civilization be to mankind? To some, of but little use truly, but many there are who would be glad to know the origin of man's primitive traditions recorded in sacred books in the shape of myths or legends, and what were the incidents that served as basis on which has been raised the fabric of various religions, right, that have existed and do exist among men, have been and still are the cause of so many wars, dissensions, and persecutions. This knowledge would also serve to disclose the source whence emanated all those superstitions that have been and are so many obstacles in the way of man's physical, intellectual, and moral progress, and to free his mind from all such trammels and make of him what he claims to be, the most perfect work of creation on earth. Also, to make known the fact that Mayak, not India, is the true mother of nations. Not Hindustan, he means, but Mayak, Mesoamerica, America, Amaraka, the Amaru Khan. Mayak is the true mother of nations. This is the true motherland. Maya, Maya, that's Buddha's mom. That's her name, Maya, mother, Maya, mother, motherland, the Mayat. Then perhaps we will be awakened in the mind of those in whose power it is to do it, a desire to save and preserve what remains of the mural inscriptions carved on the walls of the ruined palaces and temples of the Mayas that are being torn to pieces by individuals commissioned by certain institutions in the United States and other places to obtain curios to adorn their museums, regardless of the fact that they are destroying the remaining pages of ancient American history with the reckless hand of ignorance, thus making themselves guilty of the crime of Lee's history, as well as of iconoclasm. Perhaps also will be felt the necessity of recovering the libraries of the Maya sages, hidden about the beginning of the Christian era, to save them from destruction at the hands of the devastating hordes that invaded their country in those times, and to learn from their contents the wisdom of those ancient philosophers, of which that preserved in the books of the Brahmins is but the reflection. You hear that? So all these books of the Brahmins in Hindustan is just a reflection of the old knowledge of the Mayas. And to learn from their contents the wisdom of those ancient philosophers, of which that preserved in the books of the Brahmins is but the reflection. Alright, so these books of the Brahmins in Hindustan or India is just a reflection of the Maya history or stories or knowledge. Alright, that wisdom was no doubt brought to India. Again, that wisdom was no doubt brought to India, and from there carried to Babylon and Egypt. So it went from America to India, and his, based on what he's reading, to Babylon and Egypt in very remote ages by those Maya adepts, Nakal, the exalted, who started from the land of their birth as missionaries of religion and civilization went to Burma, where they became known as the Nagas. Who became known as the Nagas? The Maya. Alright, we've been telling you this, right? You are the Naga, right? You are the Naga. What is the Nagas? Oh, they say, this is what the Indian guy told me, right? In the last video comment. He said, I don't know anything. He said the Nagas are reptilian entities from space and underground. That's what he told me. That's what he told me. Real story, I'm telling you. They've been brainwashing us to think and even demonizing serpents, right? But we're talking about the snake kings, the Khans, the Nagas, the Mayas, the plum serpent, the Khans, priest kings. We're talking about the dragon kings, right? Not all snakes are bad, just like not all angels are good. Thanks to King Drop for that drop. Alright? So again, they went to Burma, the Maya, where they became known as the Nagas, Negrus. And they established themselves in the Deccan, whence they carried their civilizing work all over the earth. The Nagas. Mysteries of the Mexican Pyramids, again by Peter Tompkins. Alright, so now we're on part 25. It's called Prehistoric Mexico. Alright, and I want to read this part. We read from a book a little bit, The Lost Continent. That was written by James Churchward. I want to read a little bit of the story behind that book. Alright, so it's in this book, Mysteries of the Mexican Pyramids. It says one indication that a far earlier civilization existed in the Valley of Mexico that was reached by Manuel Daniel's spades comes from the tantalizing discovery made in the Mexican islands by a Scotsman, William Neven. As a mining engineer working for a Mexican corporation, Neven described coming upon the remains of two separate prehistoric civilizations at depths from 6 to 30 feet below the present level of the Valley of Mexico. Alright, we found a whole city, town, ruins, 30 feet below the Valley of Mexico. Alright, that's how far the town is. That's how deep. So dig on William Neven, alright? These discoveries made between 1910 and 1930 had hardly been considered by the scientific world, partly because they fit into none of the preconceived notions. Right? It doesn't fit into their out of Africa or theories and all that stuff, right? Mesopotamia and all that. And partly because they were used by an even more unorthodox author, James Churchward. Alright, so it seems that this author, James Churchward, somehow knew William Neven, got the info, and wrote his own book about it. Alright, what this guy found, William Neven, but based on what he believed, his belief. Right, so it says he used it to validate his, to them, to the orthodox scientists, is even wilder hypothesis, the existence of a vast continent in the Pacific Ocean, which he called Mother, says he, of several colonial civilizations were spread around the globe. Alright, so real quick, this is what they're talking about that James Churchward wrote, which is The Lost Continent of Mu, which we read a little bit earlier. Fantastic but true, the scientific mythical discovery of a strange civilization that disappeared 50,000 years ago. Intensely interesting. Alright, so James Churchward, right? So this is the book. But he got a lot of his studies from, as it says here, dedicated to my friend William Neven. So I guess that was his principles, by whose help and discoveries I have been able to bring to fruition this work. So you see, he wouldn't have been able to write this book if William Neven hadn't made that discovery, shared the info with him somehow. So it says preface. All matters of science in this work are based on the translations of two sets of ancient tablets. Nakal tablets, which we already know are the Nagas, which are the Mayas, right? Which I discovered in India many years ago, and a large collection of stone tablets, over 2,500, recently discovered by William Neven in Mexico. So he used the Nagas tablets, or ancient Mayas tablets, and he used other ancient
they want us gone like the Mayan race, but you never seen a G class so dry your face.
He's using all our work, all our
the Mayan race. We are the Mayan race, motherfucker.
Heard that? Both sets have the same origin.
Both no, you can't motor all those motherfucking black Africans and shit.
Lemuria, Atlantis, America, it's all this place. Here, not all of it exactly. The Nakal tablets are written with the Naga symbols and characters, and the legend says were written in the motherland, first brought to Burma, and then to India. Their extreme age is attested to by the fact that history says the Nakals left Burma more than 15,000 years ago. Alright, so now you see how James Churchward is saying that these tablets, these Naga symbols, were first brought from the motherland. We just read before, right, what Valmiki told us, right? Valmiki, let's go back. Again, the Garden of the Elder Gods book we just read, right? What did Valmiki tell us specifically? That the Maya, starting from the land of their birth in the east, which was America, right? The Maya went first to Burma, and there taught the natives.
The motherland.
The Nagas, right? So it was the Maya, it wasn't Omu. Alright, so let's go back to what, so James Churchward is taking the narrative, right? And he's not giving credit to Valmiki. He's straight up saying that the Naga symbols, right, were written in the motherland, or the place of birth. We got in the other book, right, which was the East, with the Maya, right? That was the motherland, and first brought to Burma, then to India. So when they're talking about motherland, that's the hijack. Talking about true birth of the Maya, the land of the Maya, America. It says where the Mexican tablets were written is problematical. They are mostly written in northern or Igor symbols and characters. What actual writing there is on both sets is in the alphabet of motherland. Whether they were written in Mexico or in the motherland and brought to Mexico, I cannot say. You see, he doesn't know whether they were written in the motherland. What motherland? He keeps saying Mu. It's an imagination place for him. But, you know, we know Mu is part of an ancient land that was connected to America and had something to do with also the original people that were coming out of America. Right? But he's telling you straight up here, he doesn't know whether it was in Mexico or the motherland. He can't say. Alright? They are, however, over 12,000 years old, as shown by some of the tablets. Alright, so that's just the story I wanted to, you get into this book, it goes into what you found. But let's go back to Mysteries of the Mexican Pyramid that they were talking about, James Churchward and William Eben's story. So it says Churchward's efforts, though very popular with aficionados of Atlantean or Lemurian tales, and often prophetically exact in certain details, have, because of Churchward's unsupported and highly improbable notions, he doesn't have supported evidence, been thrown out by an establishment which may have discarded, along with Churchward's Lemurian bathwater, some living screaming babies. You hear that? So even though he
throw it out his information,
or just trying to fit his
Freemasons,
he was getting a lot of true information, a lot of real historic,
archaeological, fellow Freemasons,
research that William was finding.
Oh, the greater helps you.
William crazy that wasn't fitting with what the establishment wanted at that time. They were
Freemasons ain't want it up.
Babies were screaming, saying there was information.
Same way these niggas don't want their old videos
all
out.
That got lost because of his wild theories.
Do the same shit. Bring your library down.
His fellow Freemason, Churchward was no greater help to William Even. So he was a Freemason. You see that? And he took Churchward William's work and he made his own book and probably made millions of that during that time from writing that book. Alright, so he didn't help William Even at all. Then it had been to the London, so he didn't help the John. We're gonna get into his book and William Even. He didn't help either of them, Churchward, except that with the thousands of copies Churchward books sold around the world, Even was rescued from oblivion, so we wouldn't even know about even William, right? If at least Churchward wouldn't have wrote about him, so at least he did sign. So you can remember what happened. When he died in 1937, his obit in the American Historical Review listed him merely as a professor who had been engaged for several years in mineralogical research, an honorary life member of the American Museum of Natural History, and various other such scientific societies who had become involved in Mexican archaeology, nothing more. Nothing to indicate he might have made the most controversial archaeological discovery of the Western world. Alright, so his work, what he found in 1930s, William Even, Mexico, which James Churchward took and made a book called Mu, The Lost Continent, even though this stuff was found in Mexico. I want you to understand that. Alright? His work is not known. He's not known in our textbooks. We don't know nothing about this guy. Alright? It was on purpose. He found something very controversial. Actually, Niven had been exploring in Mexico since 1889, while digging among the ancient ruined cities in the unknown and uninhabited portion of the state of Guerrero, southwest of Mexico City, in the Acapulco area. He began to receive periodic visits from local Indians who came to him with terracotta figurines and other objects for sale. Though the Indians pretended to have found these objects at the Pyramid of the Sun and Moon at San Juan Teotihuacan, he then realized that the source of the artifacts must be nearer. With a bribe of 5 pesos, which is $2.50 at that time, he managed to discover the actual spot between Texcoco and Cujalhuepantla, hamlets just north of Mexico City. He came across hundreds, if not thousands, of pits dug into the sand, clay, and tipitati, used for material by builders of Mexico City for more than 300 years. Exploring these pits, which even says cover an area of about 10 by 20 miles in the northwest corner of the Valley of Mexico, he came across vast layers of what appeared to be very ancient ruins, whole prehistoric cities lying as deep as 30 feet below the plain, which appeared to have been overwhelmed by a series of cataclysmic tidal waves. You get what's going on here? They found what he found ruins buried 30 feet below the ground. Obvious something happened there, right? Cataclysm. And perhaps at several dozen year intervals, which, as Neiman described them, have left telltale strata of boulders, sand, and pebbles by their depth beneath the surface. Neiman estimated the oldest remains might go as far back as 50,000 years. Alright? Now remember, the past videos and the other parts of this series, we got Graham Hancock telling us they've been hiding 100,000 years of history here in America. There's proof of 100,000 years of occupation, the Amazon. Alright, so what do we, what's going on here, right? What are we really finding out? This is the true old world, right? And everything that they've hidden from us. 4 to 6 feet below the first pavement, even says he encountered a second concrete floor. But in the intervening space, he failed to find a single piece of pottery or other trace to indicate that humans had once lived. Beneath the second pavement, he describes coming upon what he considered the great find of many, many years' work in Mexican archaeology. Even discerned beneath a well-defined layer of ashes from 2 to 3 feet thick, analyzed as being of volcanic origin, traces of innumerable buildings, large but regular in size, the remains of a vast city which appeared uniformly at the same level throughout more than 100 clay pits. In one of the houses, most of which were crushed and ruined, filled with ashes and debris, he says he found an arched wooden door which had turned to stone. The walls of this house were bound together with white cement, harder than stone itself. In one uncrushed room, about 30 feet square, full of volcanic ash, with a flat roof of concrete and stone, even says he came across many artifacts and human bones, which crumbled to the touch like a slaked lime. According to his detailed report, a complete goldsmith's outfit was still on the floor with some 200 models of figures and idols modeled in clay, turned to stone, each model thickly coated with iron oxide, bright in yellow, presumably there to prevent the molten metals adhering to the patterns while in the casting pot. Niven says the ornaments were unlike any found in Palenque or Mitla or anywhere between. The work was fine, beautifully polished, demonstrating an advanced degree of civilization. On the walls, Niven found paintings in red, blue, yellow, green, and black, which he says compared favorably with the best he had seen from Greek, Etruscan, or Egyptian works of a similar sort. The ground color of the wall was a pale blue. 6 inches down from the 14-foot ceiling, a frieze painted in dark red and black ran around the room, glazed with some native wax, which had perfectly preserved the color and pattern, which depicted the life of some person, apparently a shepherd from birth to death. Continuing the book, it says, then in 1921, we're still talking about William Niven and his discovery there in Mexico, in the course of excavations at Santiago Huizotla, a hamlet contiguous to Amantla, about 5 miles northwest of Mexico City, Niven came across a discovery so startling, he says it opened up for him a whole new field of archaeological research. At a depth of 12 feet, Niven described coming across the first of a series of stone tablets with very unusual pictographs, systematically exploring other clay pits and tepetate quarries within an area of 20 square miles. He claimed he was able to unearth during the course of the next 2 years 975 more tablets. In the end, he says he found more than 2,600, though there was nothing in these tablets by which he could determine their exact or even approximate age, even deduced from the depth of which they were buried and the accumulation of debris on top of them that they were over 12,000 years old and more likely closer to 50,000 years old. I just want to show you, the picture of these the artifacts that he found, tablets, found so many. It says Neiman showcase number 6 containing a portion of his collection of carved stones from the Valley of Mexico. When William Niven died in Austin, Texas in 1937, the New York Times described him as a distinguished mineralogist and archaeologist who had discovered buried prehistoric cities beneath the Valley of Mexico. He was also noted as the discoverer of 4 new minerals, including citrallite, Torogan and Nivenite. According to the Times, Niven donated to the Mexican government the best of the relics he found in Mexico, keeping for himself some which he sold to finance further archaeological expeditions. With what was later, with what was left over, there were enough pieces to establish in Mexico City a private museum of 30,000 exhibits. You hear this? How come we don't know about this?
30,000.
All right. All right. So I just wanted to go back to an illustration that was here in the book that I showed you guys. So I guess this is the depth of what he found, the ruins, the buried city. All right. So it tells you. I guess this will be the top, right? The land level. Then it says here 1 foot of earth. Then right here it says 9 feet of boulders, gravel, sand, drogues, pottery. Then it says first pavement, 6 feet of small boulders, gravel, and sand. Then it says second pavement. All right, and then it says 14 feet of small boulders, gravel, sand. Then up right here it says volcanic ashes, and then it says buried city, the third pavement. Neven's Mexican buried cities, now 7,000 feet above level of sea. Mountains 5,000 feet higher intervening. In the several strata clearly revealed by the pits, Neven says he found traces of what he describes as 3 well-preserved concrete floors or pavements at depths from above 6 to 25 feet. Above the first pavement, there was a deposit of small boulders, pebbles, and sands covered with a foot-thick coating of rich valley soil. Everywhere in the first layer of debris, Neven found fragments of broken pottery, small clay figures, diorite beads, spears and arrowheads, spindle whorls, and other artifacts, mostly broken. Alright, so this is the depth. See how deep he found this? This was buried under a cataclysm. Alright. Alright, and we're back in the book just real quick. The Lost Continent of Mu by James Churchward. Just a little closing statement from him. So again, James Churchward, he said he found some tablets called the Nakal tablets in India, right? Which we know that the Nakals are just the Nagas, which are the Mayas, right? And also he used the tablets that William Neven found, right, in his discovery here in Mexico, right? So it says the Nakal tablets, which I came across in the Orient, were only fragments of the various subjects with many missing links. The Mexican tablets not only confirmed the Nakal, but supply many of the missing links. Wow, the Mexican tablets helped them supply the missing links. I spent many years proving as far as possible by experimentation that the facts set forth in these tablets were true. I spent over 50 years in investigation, research, and explorations to prove out what I found written on these intensely interesting Nakal tablets. I have yet to find the first one that is wrong. The Mexican, like the Nakal, indubitably establishes to my own satisfaction that at one time the earth had an incalculably ancient civilization, which was in many respects superior to our own, and far in advance of us in some important essentials which the modern world is just beginning to have cognizance of. These tablets with other ancient records bear witness to the amazing fact that the civilizations of India, Babylonia, Persia, Egypt, and Yucatan were but the dying embers of the first great civilization. The Oriental Nakal tablets, which formed the foundation of the first edition of this book, were a wonderful history of past man. Neven's Mexican stone tablets are equally wonderful and instructive, if not more so. If not more, it is more so, because the original. They confirm my contention that the oldest records of man are not to be found in Egypt. All right, not to be found in Egypt or the valley of the Euphrates. They're talking about over there in Iraq and Mesopotamia. But right here in North America. But right here in North America. And in the Orient, where Mu planted her first.
They call that Red Sea the Euphrates.
So he's letting you know subliminally, right? Where can you find the oldest records of man?
Euphrates
in North America. And then he says it was passed on from there to India via Mu, he says. But he's letting you know straight up, North America. If you want to study, do real research, the cradle of humans, where we came from, our origin stories, our whole history, how we got civilized, you're going to find that here in North America. All right?
dude don't need no help. Man, Ben, break my phone. I just had fucking with this shit. Fucking with that damn screen. She don't need no help. I'm down there. Damn. She don't need no help. I'll be on PVD in a minute. I see Lord. Try to live on me. Charlie. My nigga. My nigga. Man. The myriad on these bullshit on their head. My nigga. My nigga. Nigga. My and the cow. They're all the same damn people. We always like, them the same damn people. And now we talking about the same damn people that come from this way. Fellow shit. It ain't gonna bend. Break my phone. I said, Bill, my nigga. I'll be back, bro. I'll be on 3D in a little while. Run around the YouTube street to see what's going on. I'm not this big. I like this little screen though. I said, Bill. Who should come through my nigga? My nigga. Boom.